everyone. It is Kim Bigler. I am back for season 2 of the Good Fight podcast. And before the season 1, I was sharing my me and my husband's journey with my son, Phoenix Bigler, who on July 2nd, 2023, went down for a sudden cardiac arrest, and which led to an anoxic brain injury after being without oxygen for up to an hour. And we shared all season 1 those events, how God did miraculous things in that, brought him back to life, and brought him back to life in the living. He has continued to recover, and I got so many messages from that, saying how that inspired them, that God was in a place when all hell broke loose and when all was lost. And I got so many messages that said, you know what? How many other people have testimonies that can also encourage, inspire, and impart faith to the weary in this time and in this season? So I said, talk to the Reminding, who this is brought to you by the Reminding, who is sponsoring this at Studio 7, and I brought them my heart about sharing other stories, and they loved it. So they're sponsoring this and they're supporting this. And I have on my first guest, which I've been wanting to talk to forever, because he is actually played a major part in our Phoenix's testimony. And it's Edwin Masters. And he gave me the ride to the hospital that we'll talk about later, of how that brought him closer to the Lord, maybe even back to the Lord when he was a little bit wayward, and his faith needed to be reinstilled, recentered, recored. And that story, that ride, I would say, with a praying mom to the hospital when you saw his body dead, actually did that for Edwin. And I am convinced that God will make whatever happen to reach whomever he wants to. So welcome to the Good Fight Season 2 podcast, Edwin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I not only want to get to that moment in the cop car that restored your faith or imparted faith to you for the first time, I actually want to start with how you grew up, and even, how did faith develop in your life or not develop in your life before that time?
Yeah. All right. So, super long story long. All right.
I love long stories.
Right. So,
you can't tell I'm long-winded too.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, basically, my childhood was great. Like, really couldn't have asked for a better childhood. We grew up Roman Catholic, so we went to St. Francis Cabrini Church. That's all I remember growing up, is going to St. Francis Cabrini Church on Paris Avenue in New Orleans. It's where Holy Cross is now, for those viewers that are watching, for a reference point. But just grew up in a Catholic church. Really, we went there, it was just very routine. Like, I'm sure my mom and dad, they were getting something out of it, but I didn't get anything out of it. I just used to remember, it was funny, I was like, right around the communion time, as soon as communion would end and we'd be like kneeling down, I'd be like, okay, I know there's 10 minutes left.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, so
it was something you had to do with your family, but there was no heart connection.
Right. No, I had no connection to what, was going on. I would say probably the first connection to Christ and to spirituality for me was probably during I went to De La Salle High School in New Orleans, and my senior year we went on a retreat for I forget where it was, but regardless, there it was more of like a non-denominational setting. It wasn't that Catholic setting at this retreat, because De La Salle was a Catholic school, but the speakers there were like non-denominational, and they had like broke out their acoustic guitars and everything, and just like singing, and everybody's like crying, boo-hooing and all that. And
It's more emotional.
Yeah, it caused me to get emotional and like kind of really like step into my feelings a
It
little
wasn't just cold, a cold religion. You were feeling some kind of connection with the people there.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that's basically what it was. And I remember, I forget who's the singer, but they sang a song. It was "Walk by Faith." I think maybe Jeremy Church, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still have that song on my playlist, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
It's cool.
So that song opened a door.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Music usually does for me too.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works.
It is.
Yeah, I want to bring it up later too. But yeah, so graduated, joined the military. While I was in the military, I was in Kentucky, and we went to like some church. Everybody was warning us about it. They're like, it's a cult type of thing and all that. So we're like, whatever. Like we were rebels anyway at the time. So
Right.
we didn't care what anybody thought. So we went, and it was super cool. Like I felt like I was walking into like a rock concert, and everybody just like got their hands up, doing the whole thing, And I was like,
Been there, done that.
right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm still not the guy that like has the hands up and everything. I'm working on it. But,
Yet.
yeah. I'm working on it, but like 14 years in the making, I'm just there listening, bobbing my head, but yeah, like that was like my first real introduction to that. And then got out of the military. And then we were introduced to Church of the King, because we were kind of like asking around, like, hey, we saw this super cool church in Kentucky. This was kind of like the vibe it was. They were like, oh, Church of the King is that vibe, so y'all should go there. We went there. They had free coffee. That was cool. They had the child care. Super cool. So went there, and we were there for several years. I think that's where we met.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was like back in 2012, 2013, whatever it was.
Yes.
And yeah, and the rest is kind of history. And then
Now, at that time when you were at Church of the King, would you say you were going to church because it was the right thing to do? You knew that you believed in God, but did you make him Lord? Like, a lot of people have a lot of head knowledge, and it's a good thing to do, and they feel somewhat connected to the message, to Christ in a certain way. But would you say at that time that, it was in your heart? It was not just head knowledge, not just something that you did, but did you feel a real relationship to Jesus?
Oh yeah. Yeah, back then, from that time frame, like 2011 to, I would say probably like 2016-ish, I was locked in. Like
So you were like on fire.
I was on fire. For
okay.
Jesus,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
sure. I was totally locked in, and good to go.
Yeah,
I was part of small groups, like little men's small groups,
Right.
and the whole 9 yards.
Especially for a man, if you're committed to the Lord and you're doing all of that, you're on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time I was like, I want to like change the stigma for like cops. Like cops could be Christians and all that, which there are several cops that are Christians, like come to find out later in my career, but I really didn't see much of them.
Yeah,
Because at the time
right.
I was working in New Orleans, and none of them really
Were
at all.
We're
Yeah.
walking with the Lord.
Yeah. But yeah, that was like my thing,
That is very interesting, because even when I have met cops that are Christian, you wouldn't know it, because
Yeah.
y'all keep everything close to the vest, which we will talk about
Yeah.
later on this podcast. But as you progress, what would you say? Did you ever come into a time where your faith was tested? Were you always on fire? Did you hit rough patches like everyone does in life? Did you have your faith tested in a way that you walked away ever? What were those valley moments in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there's several, I equate like Christianity and, let's say, like Jesus is your overall health, right? And you're completely healthy. You're just regular dude, super healthy. And then you get sick, right? Like you get a cold, you get a sinus infection, you get the flu, you get COVID, all these different things. Like different things happen in life where you become, sick, right? And you need a certain prescription to get you back on track. And then other things happen that kind of draw you back to it.
Right.
So there's several things that happened, like pivotal moments in my life.
That were chipping away.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
what? Because that's what the devil does. I mean,
yeah.
if people out there, are wondering, there's just Jesus and nothing else. No, there's Jesus and there's powers and principalities and high places where the Bible says we have spiritual warfare. We do engage with demonic forces out there that and it wants nothing more than your faith.
Yeah.
It wants your faith.
Yeah.
So people who are on fire. And that's why I asked you if you were on fire, because if you're on fire, there is a trial coming.
Oh, yeah.
There is a tribulation coming where either God will test that faith and refine it even more, like you said, a prescription, purify it in its purest form, and then you're going to just be pushing back the kingdom of darkness, and you're going to be advancing the kingdom of God pretty soon. Or you could kind of go into that wilderness period that Jesus had, so to speak, and the devil takes hold of your mind, and he wants your faith, and he wants you to curse God and die. What were those chipping aways?
Yeah, like I said, there's several of them. Just being in law enforcement, you're almost exposed to that daily. Just like you lose faith in humanity.
Because you see the worst of it.
You see the worst in people.
What are the things you've seen?
But
just so people would understand what a cop actually sees.
Yeah. In New Orleans, you seen people kill themselves. You walk on scene of suicides. I was stabbed while I was working in the jail in New Orleans. That was a whole thing. That's a whole nother story. And me having to pull my gun out on people because I think that they're about to pull a gun out on me, and like you're pulling the slack out of a trigger, for the cops watching this, you know what that means.
Right.
And it's the amount of adrenaline that's dumped into your body at that point, and the cortisol levels that we constantly deal with, having to make life or death decisions and split-second decisions that you could be wrong on,
right? Because
we are human, right? And then you gotta go
Which
home.
needs to be a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because
possibly a season.
I feel that law enforcement, that whole defund police was, I just feel was not fair, because I feel like there's many good cops.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's no bad ones, but for anyone to know what it feels like to make a life or death decision, to feel that your life may be in danger, and you just admitted it. We could get it wrong, because in a split second to make that to what your body's doing physiologically, I don't think anybody can say that they would make the right decision every single time.
Well, no. Yeah, and you got to think about it like the price of insurance, right? For vehicle insurance, typically it'll go down once a young adult reaches the age of 25 is the typical range. I could be wrong on that, so whoever's fact-checking, whatever. But we're going to say 25 years old. That's typically, from what I heard, when the mind starts to, I guess, fully develop more and become more mature, right? So, yeah, think about it. You're giving cops this access to firearms and life or death decisions, and they're very young. Like at that age, I was like 23 years old, and I still haven't even fully developed mentally yet.
I was going to say, what did you think that did to your brain and your body and your emotions? And then how did that those very practical physical things, did that play a part in making you numb to Jesus? Like, how does that correlate?
Yeah, it just, you start looking at like society. So when you start going through high stress and rapidly evolving situations like that, what ends up happening is that you start comparing like other people, right? You go to church, right? You see all these people, their hands up, they're praying, they're doing everything that they should be doing, but you're judging them because they're like, they don't know what real life is like.
They don't know what real life
is like. They don't know what stress is.
Right.
And then you just start slowly detaching.
Because you feel that they don't understand, and that you entering into that is just too easy. Because the things that you've seen are like these layers that you're needing like attention for. You're needing ministry, and these people just feel carefree to you.
Yeah, they feel they're, we call them the joke is that they're sheep, right? And the law enforcement is the sheepdog that protects, the sheep,
Right.
and then you got your wolves out there. That's the, the. It's not cheesy. I mean, it's true, but
Right.
It's the little cheesy comparison that they do. But that's how we think. We think everybody's a bunch of sheep, and they don't want to become. They don't want to be aware of all the dangers in the world. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, doing this almost 14 years now, like, I'm tired of thinking about all the dangers in the world.
Totally.
Like, I want to live like those people.
Right.
You
You
like,
want to be carefree.
Yeah, like I want to. 'Cause, I mean, look, I've been through it. I've done it. I know it's out there, but also at the end of the day, like, when you're just engulfed in it all the time,
Totally.
and you're literally like engulfed in flames, right? Constantly.
Yes. Talk about all hell breaking loose.
Yeah, like every day.
Every day is all hell breaking loose.
And you got to think, most people they might go through 1, 2, maybe even 3. Let's say 3, like, critical incidents in their life.
Right.
You're going through everybody's critical incident of their life.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
You go from one call, that was their most critical incident they'll ever experience in their entire life. Well, that's just your 3rd call of the day.
Right.
And every single one of those people are going through their most critical incident. So you're now taking on all their stress, and then you got to just put it to the side, because you got to handle this unbiased. You got to handle this without caring. You don't have time to cry.
You're right.
You don't have time to do
Or
any of that.
feel.
No, you just got to push it to the side, compartmentalize it, and then move forward.
So
But
basically you become a robot.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You become a robot, and it just affects everything. It affects your health. It affects
Your family. Your marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, most cops get divorced. It's not out of coincidence. It's not a secret,
Is
Like,
there a high suicide rate?
There is. It's one of the leading causes for law enforcement is suicide. Is because I think they feel like nobody understands it,
Right. And
Like-
it's hard for them to go, from what I hear, hard for them to go home and be a dad to children, because they've been just on high alert all day long, responding to these critical incidents. And then you have to kind of, how do you shed the uniform when you've been in hell, walking through hell for a 12-hour shift or whatever,
Yeah.
and then your son wants to play trucks on the rug,
And all you want to do is just go to sleep.
and all you need to do actually is go to sleep,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
To
or-
rest your brain and your senses.
Right. And it's true. Like you have to. A lot of cops don't know how to decompress, and don't allow themselves to decompress. Don't allow themselves to detach from the job. And I still struggle with that. Like
Because you have to be very aware of it.
Yes.
You have to almost like intentionally be able to detach.
Yeah, you have to call yourself out on it.
You have to call yourself out. You have to be someone who can call a spade and not be in denial about things.
Which we call people spades all the time.
You do.
Being cops, so why are we so afraid to call ourselves out?
Why? Stubborn.
Yep, stubborn, and I think so. I'm not gonna like just say that this is the exact reason, but some people do this because it's a sense of power that they have.
I can understand.
And I think that's the wrong look on it.
That's the
Like,
wrong motivation.
You shouldn't do
of
it for
going
that,
into law enforcement.
Shouldn't be doing it for that, but at the end of the day, people do.
Are they what you call bad cops? Or can they
I
do
think
good
that-
police work and have that motivation?
I don't necessarily think there's definitely bad, evil people that's in this profession, but I think majority of cops aren't necessarily bad. They just have bad behaviors that
Which we all do.
Yeah, everybody does. Yeah, that just need to be addressed, and if they fix that, then they would be great people, great cops.
Which brings me to why I wanted to have you on, because when I'm thinking of the good fight of faith, And that is like, where is God to help us overcome when all hell breaks loose and all seems lost? And being, a chaplain within the agency myself and talking to law enforcement, I literally had to repent to the Lord saying, I am so sorry. I've not been covering these guys. Like, I just didn't connect that when all hell breaks loose, you all are running into that darkness, to that humanity's lowest moment on a daily basis, and you guys are exposed to so much spiritual warfare because you're actually carrying the burden of other people's spiritual warfare. Yep. That's practically acting out in society, almost meaning someone had some wrestlings with God, something took over that was not God, and now it's manifesting in violence, it's manifesting in suicide, it's manifesting in hitting, going after other people, and even cops, going after cops, especially lately. And it's like, how in the world is any law enforcement officer going to be able to walk through hell and not become completely dysfunctional while doing it? When you don't have Jesus, when you don't have the people of God around you, when no one is covering you spiritually, because spiritually, as you know, that's what happens. That's what's kind of acting out practically or in the natural. And it's like, there's no spiritual covering for law enforcement in the way that it should be. And when I see lives falling apart in the law enforcement community or families or marriages, it was only a matter of time. Mm-hmm. Because when you say, well, have you been walking with the Lord? No. Not even feeling the need for it, but also not even really, like you saying, having a connection to that life force, because no one understands when you're going. I only know this now because walking in a fishbowl, it becomes a fishbowl with Phoenix. I feel like I've been in a fishbowl for over a year. And I'm not going to lie. I have walked in churches feeling what you have felt. You don't understand what real pain is. Could be judgmental, but I walked in going, just leaving my son, able to walk around the building, and then all of a sudden spasticity hits his legs, and he can't even get out of the bed, right afterwards. Right. And I'm going, and everyone is, praise the Lord, this, that, and the other. I'm like, you have no idea. So I get that. And I wouldn't have if I didn't go through hell myself. And then trying to find small groups or lifelines that do understand you is rare. And that's why they do have grief small groups, or they have, divorce small groups and things like that. Those things matter because those things are fishbowls in and of itself, different types of hell, so to speak, that one needs to find God in. Yeah. But I'm going to be very honest. I can go to support groups of, kids walking through real medical issues and things like that. But where are the ones that speak to law enforcement? I would hope after this podcast, every single church would have one. Yeah. I even told Edwin before we started, he needed to start a group, and he's thinking of starting a podcast that he can talk about later. But how do you then, being a cop, going through these issues, and I want to hear more about the stabbings and what that actually did for you, because I think that is something we need to dig into, because a lot of people have had trauma that said, yeah, but you didn't go through this. Tell me where your faith was in all of that, and how did you, and that maybe brings us to my son, what happened to my son, but how did you stay connected to that fire, to that faith, to that heart connection to Jesus when you've walked through other people's hell on a day-to-day, you have to respond to other people's hell on a day-to-day, and now you've been stabbed like 12 times, how do you stay connected and on fire and childlike before the Lord?
Yeah. It's a difficult thing to do, and there's not a real easy answer to it. I think for me at least, like when I got stabbed in New Orleans, it actually didn't sway my faith much at all.
You were like, this was just part of the job or whatever?
Yeah, I kind of accepted it. That it just is what it was. Oh well. It happened, and I was fine. But it was just more like other things that started happening, dealing more with other people's trauma. I don't know why. I don't know if it's I'm an empath or whatever. But I feel like I am affected by other people's stuff more
Right.
than what happens to me.
Right.
And it affects me. And then being in investigations too, like you're dealing with some pretty heinous things,
Right.
that people
Especially
do.
to children.
Yeah, yeah. And then when there's times when you can't bring justice, right, because of whatever reason, or you lose a case, right, in court, like that stuff eats at you, and
You can't do anything about it.
no,
That
Yeah,
is
it's-
the worst feeling.
yeah, and it happens, but I feel like what brought me back was just divine intervention.
Yes. So
Like-
God was after you,
Yep.
in layman terms.
Yes.
He
And-
was after you. And that's what I want to get across right now before he goes into how God got him back, is because I think you were there, you were connected, you just were maybe your faith was deflated.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that was true?
Yeah, I would say it was deflated, and then I just slowly, because while going,
Isolated.
yeah, I started isolating myself from the church, right? So I just, I'm gonna miss this week because I was pissed, right? From the last time I went in, and all these people, they're telling me they're going through this, and I'm like, yeah,
That's
but
nothing.
what about this mom that
I just saw a baby.
her kid overdosed, right? Been dealing with this, and she's crying, and I just had to comfort her just yesterday, and you're worried about this minuscule thing.
Yes,
And-
yes. I
But
get it.
This family is destroyed. Like, so I slowly just started detaching myself, and that was just the devil,
Totally.
picking at me, saying,
Yes.
look, what these Christians that
Yes,
you
yes.
speak of, that you adore, and
Yeah, the
you claim
accuser
you
of the
love.
brethren.
Right? Yeah, that's just the little, the devil in my brain, like talking to me, right,
Yes.
and telling me they don't know what real pain is, buddy.
Right,
Like leave them.
right.
Just keep surrounding yourself but with all these other cops that aren't seeking mental health
Right,
treatment and all that,
right.
and they're super toxic. You just
Misery
keep-
loves
yeah,
company.
you keep hanging out with them because they understand you. They understand you. They understand the pain, even though we're all broken.
See, that voice sounds like a good friend, but it is your ultimate enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need people that are going, like, at the end, to get you in the door, you need them. But at the end of the day, you need something else to actually, and that's God. You need God and people that are in that environment to bring you back.
Yes.
Because getting away from that toxicity is a very good thing.
Yes.
And because I'm a little ADD, so I'm sorry, but
So am I. So this is going all over the place.
yeah, but like to go back to with the stabbing and then how that affected it. So I slowly started detaching myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that caused me to get my relationship with my ex-wife. That caused a divorce. That was
So you were
that-
detached in marriage at the time,
I was
too.
detached with everything.
You were detached from everything.
Everything. Like nobody understood me. So why?
Lone soldier, maverick now.
Yeah, like forget everybody.
I'm the burden bearer. No one can bear my burdens.
Exactly.
And no one will ever understand them.
Yep. Yep. Nobody knows what goes through my head. So
Which causes a self-righteousness
Right.
every single time. And you see that even nationally.
Yeah.
Everyone is like, no one understands us. And it's like, my rights, my rights, my rights. When it's really, what we really need is a surrender. Yeah.
yeah, let somebody understand you.
Let someone understand you.
Mm-hmm.
Because more times than not, if there's actual deep dialogue, like dialogue with people who actually care to understand, that understanding can be found.
Yep.
And then love can be felt and
Yes.
received.
Yep.
Because when someone feels understood, they feel loved and accepted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what you were looking for, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I felt no love. I didn't believe in it. Nothing about it.
You couldn't feel it.
I was completely detached from love.
Yeah. I see that a lot in the law enforcement community.
Yeah. Yeah, because you see people that supposedly love, their children, love their spouse, and then they beat them.
Right.
They harm them. They do all this stuff. So you start to.
So the evil twist that for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's sad, but that's just the way you begin to think.
Yeah, you become cynical. You become pessimistic. And all of those things are the enemy, because then you won't ever be able to see with the eyes of God what's all around you to be grateful for. So I'm sure there's no gratitude.
No.
There's no there's no gratefulness for your life. You start feeling life as a burden that you have to just slug.
And that's the thing, like, with cops, like, we should practice gratitude more, because we know how easy life can be lost.
Right.
Like
you are the people that have all the testimonies and the stuff that you all get to see. And I say get to because at the end of the day, law enforcement is a calling.
Yeah. Something we signed up for.
Right. And so, but to see what can go wrong real quick, and to see that you still have your health, or you still have your family, or you still have your kids, I mean, I would think that would lead you to more gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. You would think so, but it doesn't.
No, and not only doesn't, it's almost like it leads you to be toxic to them. Interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
Where you lose it.
Yeah, and then you get home, like you were saying, like you come home and your kids are super excited to see you. They want to play Tonka trucks or whatever, and then you're just like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, but when you should be going home and like
playing with them, and that's probably better mental health.
1,000%.
Because you're totally detaching from your job when you're playing Tonka trucks.
Yep. Yeah, but I think, and this is just my experience too, because I have a 3-year-old little girl now, right? And as soon as I get home, she just wants to play, and then we're usually playing till 7:30, 8 o'clock till it's time for her to take a bath. And it's hard sometimes. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, this is the easiest thing in the world. It's not. It's
you
not.
Have to force yourself.
Yeah, sometimes you got to force it, and you shouldn't. But
fake it till you make it. I hate to say it, but that's true.
You have to do it. But what you have to do first, in order to be intentional with that time that you have with your children or with your spouse, is that you have to allow yourself to detach and decompress from the day.
Right.
Because what nobody else in the house knows. So you may have gone through several critical incidents throughout that work day.
Right.
Right. But they don't know any of that.
Right.
So you need, whether you tell your spouse, hey, I'm going to be an hour late from work. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to go to the lakefront, just chill out at the lakefront.
And spouses need to know that.
And they need to be okay with that.
That's what they sign up for, America.
Yeah, truly, if you want your marriage to last,
that has to be a part of the day-to-day.
Because it might not work for everybody, but you do. One good thing about when I was working in New Orleans was that I lived on the North Shore, so I would leave New Orleans at like 6 o'clock in the evening, and then I'd come. It would be almost an hour drive home because all the traffic in Mid-City and everything. So it would take a while to get home, but it was a great opportunity to decompress. And it's
that's good.
Yeah, it was.
It's a good drive.
And what was interesting was that during that time that I was in New Orleans, that's when I was the most spiritually sound.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because you had that time. You could be ministered to.
And some of that in those 3.5 years that I was there, that was some of the worst stuff I've experienced ever in my life.
Wow, but you were the strongest in the Lord. That's very interesting.
So that's an interesting correlation that I found with being able to decompress and detach.
That's big time. Yeah, because that drive, it was just you and the Lord.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, like, and whether, whether you need to, whatever you got to do, like get in the gym, go do something, but you need to allow yourself a safe place and a safe time to decompress and detach from the workday. And that truly could go for any profession.
Anyone.
Like truly.
Yes,
you know,
I have to detach now,
Yep.
from caring for my son. And even though he's amazing, it's just no matter what it is, you've got to have some alone time and get with the Lord.
Yep.
Yeah.
And find something to do outside of this job.
That's creative,
Yes.
that's physical, that works something in you that stirs up a passion other than law enforcement.
Yeah. No, absolutely. For me, that was
a saving grace for you.
Yeah. It was huge. Photography. I was kind of always artsy. I was a painter, and I did a lot of portrait drawing, which I do portrait photography now, which is
That's interesting.
Yeah. But as a kid, I used to like to do portraits of people.
So you always did that as a cop?
No, that started in like 2018.
Okay, you decided
when I picked
need
it
to
up.
pick it.
I think it was right when it was one of the iPhones came out and it had portrait mode on it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you remember
and it
that time.
inspired you.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, the background all blurry, that looks super cool. Like, so then I just got in a rabbit hole of
See, there's good things about iPhones.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And so that
Brings you out of PTSD.
Exactly.
Hey, I'll give it to you.
Right, hey. Give Apple credit on
Yeah,
that.
give Apple credit on
Yeah.
curing PTSD.
Yeah.
I love it.
But that allowed me to actually get in. I went into a rabbit hole of just being creative, I guess, and like exploring cameras and allowing me to step into that.
To be
that realm.
creative and use your brain differently.
Yeah, because I just went to a retreat back in August. It was called the Rome Retreat, and one of the speakers it was a wedding videography retreat, and one of the speakers, his name is Boomer Bate. He's a wedding videographer, but he's also a musician. He composes music and everything, and his presentation was nothing about music. It was just about stepping into your inner childlike self, and that even as adults, that child wants to be let free every now and then.
Right,
and
right.
You have to allow yourself to play.
Yes, childlike.
Yes,
You
and
gotta be
that goes into
childlike.
that childlike faith, right?
It does.
So and that's kind of where I'm going
That's
into
where
that.
you're
Yeah.
going with it.
So, and it was he had everybody like literally in the whole room. They were like boohoo crying, like when he's talking, because he says, I always said I wanted to be an NBA player. So he said once a week I go to his local gym wherever he lives, and he literally goes and trains. He pays for it, trains with a NBA coach.
Wow.
Not like a head coach or anything, but he's like one of the trainers for a coach at his local
So
area.
he's still activating his dreams,
Yes,
childlike dreams.
he's tapping into that child. Like, a child believes they could do whatever.
Anything.
They could be whatever. So why
Right.
can't we do that as adults? It's because we think it's stupid,
Right.
right? And we don't want to look stupid.
Right. Totally.
Which is the same thing with cops.
I was going to say it's worse for cops.
Yeah, because they
Because
don't
they
want.
really have a shell.
They don't want to tap into like any type of vulnerability. But
No vulnerability. Creativity might seem vulnerable.
yes,
Yeah.
Very.
That's very interesting.
yeah. So like, I thought that was so important. Like when he said that, like I said, he had everybody like crying in there, like just because everybody was like, they could feel that child. Like, yes, I've been begging you to play.
I feel like that's what God tells us.
Yeah.
I've been begging you to play.
Yep.
I've been begging you to come to me.
Yep.
I want time with you. I want to make you laugh. I want you to feel joy again.
Yes.
And you keep holding on to your pain, and you keep working through your pain, and you keep judging the church through your pain, and you keep, on Facebook, like, armchair activist through your pain. You keep pointing out every dog that barks, you bark back pain.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that will actually heal it, you're not willing to do. And what's crazy is the one thing that he asks is the easiest thing in the world. He just says, receive. It's not an earning, everything else in the world is an earning.
Yeah.
You have to earn everything. And the worst word for me ever is when I hear, oh, it's about the hustle. Well, I hate the damn hustle, okay? And when I hustle, that's the furthest away from God that I feel that I'm at.
Yeah.
But so it's not about earning, it's about receiving. And I just feel if law enforcement can all enter into that place of receiving, becoming childlike again, what were those things that excited you when you were a kid?
Right.
And to tap into that again. Because God made you to feel excitement over those things. He made you. The Bible says, before you were fully formed in your mother's womb, I had a plan. I had a purpose. He put talents. He put gifts. Not everybody is creative. But some people like physical activity. They want to go and do, a power run or be a triathlete or be, or like you said, play basketball again.
Yeah.
And what is it going to take? And maybe this goes back to your story of what did it take to get you back to that place of faith, that childlike faith of receiving from God again, of feeling loved by Him, of feeling that He's there, that He's alive, He's close, that He has a plan. How did you get back to that being deadened for so long?
Yeah. So really, like,
and you said divine interventions. What were those?
yeah. So, obviously me and you, we've known each other since 2012, whenever it was at Church of the King. And, you just when Chief Farrell came in, you just so happened to just walk through the door one day and you're like, what's happening? You're like, what's up? I'm your chaplain, and,
I don't even know how I became the chaplain.
Right.
I do when Chief Farrell says you're up, I'm how high?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you do what he says.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right, exactly. And you're
Reporting
like,
to duty.
You're like, I'm y'all's chaplain. I'm here to work. I'm here to change you. Because, and I remember when we talked.
That was bold.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's what I loved about you with the when you first told me back at Church of the King, you were like, I'm a gangster for Jesus. And
I'm a little rough around the edges, folks.
Yeah, but you had the Bloods and Crips like in the living room, like literally holding hands, like praying. That's gangster. Like, so I have to respect it. And so it was cool. Like you came on, and then boom, July happens, right? And
tell that story from your point of view, because you and I will always be part of our faith story for one another.
Yeah.
And people have heard season 1, the Good Fight podcast, was all about my perspective.
Yeah.
But no one's heard it from another perspective than my own.
Yeah.
But how, from your perspective, what did you see God do? What did God do in you? And how has that played a major role in what you're doing today?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That day we were working a proactive enforcement thing. This when we were having a lot of crime problems in the city, and we created this proactive unit, and we were going out, just doing proactive police work. And the shift ended. I think we ended at 6 that day, and for some reason, I stayed to BS with the guys, right? In our little squad room, and I was like, I'm just gonna chill. And I remember Candace, she even called me. It was like, hey, when you coming home? Because it was like 6:15. I was like, oh, I'm talking to the guys. I'm gonna leave here in like 10 minutes or so. And she was like, all right, cool, get home, type of thing. And so then a call comes over the air, says a kid was just struck by a vehicle behind Southern Hotel, and it was a hit and run. So I'm like, oh shit, it's a kid, like we gotta go. So I went. It was me, a couple other guys that were the first on scene. Fire department got there at the same time as us because they were super close too. And we saw who we identified later as Phoenix there. And what I noticed was that there was no like tire marks. There was no sign of like a hit, like the bike wasn't damaged. He did have a gash on his head, but I was like, I don't think this is a hit and run. And then I look at him, and he's pretty much blue.
Yeah.
He's discolored.
Yeah.
And
You told me I've seen dead people, Kim, and he was dead.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I like it straight. He
Yeah.
gave it to me straight.
Yeah, 1,000%. He looked like he was dead, which he was.
Right.
Clinically.
Yeah.
And he one of the fire department guys starts doing CPR, and then you rotate every 30 seconds doing the CPR, and then one of our other officers, which you may want to speak with him, get his story, get his perspective too. I'll give you his name after.
Give it.
But he was the other one that was doing CPR, and he actually rode on the ambulance with Phoenix and was doing CPR with him. So I'll tell you his name after. But they were doing it, and then one of the other firemen pulled out the ID, so I grabbed the ID, and I look, and I see Bigler. And then I look, and I was like, Phoenix? I was like, no. And
I mean, what are the chances?
yeah, I was like, no, this can't be, and then I had a friend to backtrack a little bit, like where my mind was at this point. I had a friend that had him and his wife had a full-term stillbirth, and and they were on fire for Jesus, and they still are, but that happened to them, that crushed them, and then that really, the devil talking to me again, like, why would he do that to one of his most devout followers, and then when I see that name, it immediately hit again, like, look, told you,
Right.
this is who he does it to, buddy.
Right.
You want to believe in God, you die.
Right. Right.
Like that's
right.
That's like what was going through
You're
my
like
mind.
the chaplain's son.
Yeah, I'm like, she's literally a gangster for Jesus. Like, like
Literally.
He can't, like, he wouldn't do this to her, but he did.
Wow.
And I think it was for a much bigger reason.
Definitely.
But so he gets in the ambulance. As soon as I saw that name, I called the chief, and I said, "Hey, chief," I think he was like cutting his grass in the field or whatever at his house, and I was like, "Hey, Kim Bigler's son Phoenix, he's dead." He's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's I don't know what happened. They got called in as a hit and run, but he's what we call 10-7." And he was like, "All right." I forget what he
was
exactly.
he shocked?
He was very shocked.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because he's a friend of yours.
Right.
So
we're friends first. Yeah.
right, and so I told him that. Then I said, or he said, "Call. I need you to call Kim. Don't say what's going on at this point." He was like, "But you need to call Kim, tell her to get to the hospital."
Which is miracle number one. I always tell people is that a cop lied to me was miracle number one.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you've never been a liar to me.
Yeah.
And I know your integrity. And so for you to know that he was clinically dead, and because I remember asking when you called, I said, "Is he dead or alive?" Because I felt it. Something was going. Is he dead? And you said, "I don't know." And that was the first. But that's what gave me the faith to pray as I did when we were in the car.
Yep, and that's exactly. I even told the fire department, because after I called you, and I knew Ben's shop is right there,
Right. Yeah.
and I'm like, shit, they're like right around
Right
the corner,
there.
like they can't come here and see this,
Right.
So I told I was like, y'all need to go, like his parents are about to be here, like y'all need to go, and they left, they rolled, they went to the hospital, and that's when Chief called me. He was like, "Kim doesn't have a ride. I need you to go pick her up." And I was like, "Got it, no problem." So I run blue lights to go pick you up, and then get you and your daughter in the car. And you started asking me, what am I looking at?
Right.
Is he dead?
Right.
I'm like, I don't know.
That was like the best thing you could have ever said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it allowed you to have
Hope.
and childlike faith.
Yes, I did. I did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't really remember anything I did or said in the car.
Yeah.
What was your experience? What was I praying? What was I saying?
So you were like literally speaking life over him, like he wasn't dead. Like you were declaring, this is what he's going to do in this world. He's going to change people. You know,
I do remember that.
Yeah, and that he was going to touch millions, everything, and it was powerful.
What
Yeah.
did you feel? Like, what was, when I was praying and you were getting me to the hospital, what was God doing in you at that time?
So actually, it was the devil was working on me hard in that car.
Yeah.
Because
were you thinking, she's going to be praying this, she's going to get her hopes
she's
up?
praying for nothing.
She's praying for nothing.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
She's praying for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
How many people think that?
Too many.
Too many. And I've had mothers come up to me and say, that's good for you. Fair enough. But I lost mine.
Yep.
So I prayed prayers. I believed. Were they not strong enough? Were they not in a certain tone? Were they not declared a certain way? Did I not fast? Did I not? They always come up, at least one, and say, what did I not do? Did I not have enough faith? Because God took my son, even when I prayed.
Yep.
And you know what I say? I don't know. Because, Edwin, sometimes we think we should have all these answers as the church, when the best answer you can give somebody was, I don't know. I'm sorry. The only thing I do know is God's still on the throne, and he was.
Yep.
He was with my son. He is with your son. That's the only thing I know, is God never relinquished control.
Right.
What that plan was is something I will never, it's a bigger plan that I cannot see, comprehend, or understand. Because the worst thing in the world you can tell somebody is how you think God would, you're not God. Why give God answers like
Right.
that? And all I do is hug them. And you know what? Those mothers end up being my biggest prayer warriors now for Phoenix.
Yeah.
They appreciated that I went, I don't know. Because what I do know, Ed, when we were in the car together, is I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a choice to make. I had fear, and I was feeling, I felt I could pick a side. And I picked a side, and I felt I just had a gift of faith come into that car. And that took over, actually. So that's the only reason, and that's the only reason I tell people, I was like, I was given something I didn't have at the time. And that carried over to the hospital. How did you know when we got to the hospital, what happened? Like, I don't even remember being at the hospital.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, my phone started ringing in the car.
Yes.
And I ignored it.
Yes.
I just hit the button on this because it was a little touch screen. So I hit the button because it was the officers that were riding in the ambulance with Phoenix that were calling me. And I was assuming they were calling to confirm that he was dead.
Dead, right.
And I didn't want that going over the Bluetooth audio.
Right, right.
Obviously.
Yes, right.
While
I'm declaring life. Yeah, that's kind of a mood breaker.
Yeah. And, and we're very blunt about things, cops in general. So, like, there's certain
He's
ways,
dead.
certain ways to, like, deliver
right.
that message, and that's not it. So I ignored the calls, and then the deputy chief calls me and ignored that call, because you're in the car with me.
Right.
And the whole time, the devil's telling me, look, they're calling to tell you he's dead.
And I'm going to have to sit with her.
Yeah. And
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. But what God did was say, tell her, I don't know, because it's not in your hands, buddy.
It's not in your hands.
Yep. And then
you have no right to call it.
Yeah.
Because I haven't.
Yeah.
That's what God was telling
you. Exactly. And, it was crazy because you get out the car, and I think the chief was there.
Yes, I remember seeing the chief.
Deputy chief was there, and they immediately, like, escorted you in, and then I had to go find somewhere to park. So I called the officer back, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And he was like, they got him back. They got his pulse back. And I
What
was
did you think at that moment?
literally like all the hairs on my arm and my neck stood up. And I was like, what? Like,
Did I know yet?
no.
No. So you found out he was alive before I did.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, there's no way. You know, like, and then they're like, yeah, they got him back.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in that moment, how did you reconnect with the Lord? Were you like, just like, what did that do to you?
Well, that immediately planted that seed again. Because, and I'm not going to say just everything was like kumbaya and
Neither
sunshine
with
and
me.
rainbows. Like,
Yeah, me neither.
as soon as that like call happened, like it just wasn't like, you know, I became this on fire again Christian.
Yeah.
Because what immediately happened was like, okay, yeah, they got his pulse for now, but they'll lose it.
Right. I get it.
They'll lose it.
I
You know,
get it.
and then that's what the devil's telling me. You know, so
He's not going to make the night.
he's not going to make it the night.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
He's not going to make the week.
No, he's not going to make the month. But look at us now. It's a daily reminding.
It's a daily reminding. At the reminding.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's what the good fight looks like at the reminding.
Yeah, like truly, and you know, like, and it's not easy every day, you know,
Right.
but like, yeah, that one divine pivotal moment is what planted that seed again.
It did. That
You know.
God is a God of miracles.
Or I should say, I was in a drought.
You were in a drought.
I was in a drought for a long time.
Right.
You know, like severe drought.
Right.
And,
You needed to see God's hand move.
And then God rained down on me
Wow.
that day.
Wow. And then I heard you start going back to church.
Yeah. Well, yep. Started going back. Well, I started listening to church.
You started listening. Okay, baby steps for
Yeah.
cops. Yeah, baby
Absolutely.
steps.
Yeah. No, we don't just.
Y'all don't just dive into nothing.
The only thing we dive into is trauma. You know, it's literally it's the only thing we dive into.
I love that.
But it is so true. Like, oh, we're so toxic. But yeah, all the good things we should be diving into, we're like,
You're like,
no, that looks too
isn't
good
that
for me.
crazy?
You know?
That looks too good to be true.
Yeah.
It's a doubt.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like good things, like y'all. That's a very interesting point. You all are cynical and skeptical and pessimistic over good things
Yes.
because there's a ball that's going to drop because that's what y'all are used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you were waiting for that ball to drop with Phoenix and it never did.
never did.
It never did. And you gave him a hug at the football game when he came back to school.
Yeah, I think that was my first time seeing him at that detail. Yeah.
Yep. And he was back at home kind of coming on the band.
Yep.
And he continues to recover now, brick by brick, as God promised he would.
Yep.
He said he would never not do it all at once. He would do it brick by brick, but it was to keep people believing. Because I tell this to people, it was almost easier that moment to believe that dead could come back to life, and he did, than it is to believe every single day that God will do what he says. In the hospital, I heard he will recover all and more. But when you see your child fighting to come back, and he's fighting to, it's a fight. Talk about the good fight. Once Phoenix is able to share his testimony, that will be off the charts.
Yeah.
Because that's the good fight that I see him fight every day. But it was almost easier to have, in a crazy way, that one-shot miracle of life when something's dead than to see a slow rebound and recovery and a rebuilding. And I feel like that happens with you and me and anyone in law enforcement, anyone, period, is that it is so easy for us to go back into a drought even after seeing miracles. But that's in the Bible too.
Yeah.
People saw miracles and then they left Jesus.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because it's just the overwhelming, I guess, consensus with Christians and like the people that doubt Christians, and you look at it like influencers, right? There's these influencers all over the country and all over the world. They look like they live these marvelous lives, right? you're just like, oh, they have the best life. They're so good. They're so powerful. All these different things. They should be looking at Jesus like that. But I'll digress a little bit just to say my point. But then you hear that they got arrested for something, or they got in trouble for this, they got in trouble for that, and they're like, oh my God, and the media is blasting it. But they made these people godlike people, and then everybody's shocked when they're normal.
When they fall.
Or when they're normal. And that's like all of us as humans. Like we're literally all just regular people. We have the Holy Spirit in us technically, but we're human.
We're a work in progress.
I tell everybody all the time, because if you know me personally, I do use profane language every now and then.
Right. I don't know what cop doesn't.
Right, exactly. And I've had people be like, I thought you were a Christian. And I was like, I am.
Right.
I am. Don't get it twisted, buddy.
And I need Jesus every day.
I love Jesus.
But I am not Jesus.
I worship Jesus, but I ain't Jesus. Don't get it twisted.
I gotta remember that one.
It's true. But that's just it doesn't make me less of a Christian. It just makes me me.
Right.
And that's all of us. We're all gonna go through droughts. I'm not taking baby steps, because my wife, she'll tell you, after that moment, I literally have faith so much. She's the type that is super analytical, right?
Right.
Has to have all the facts, has to know I need to know the numbers, I need to know this. I'm like, don't worry about that.
Right, you have faith.
I was like, it's gonna whatever's supposed to happen.
Wow.
Will happen.
That moment did that for you.
It did.
Because you saw a moment. There was nothing we actually did that brought that about. Only God.
Mm-hmm. And what's crazy is, since that moment, and since I've experienced and was able to see that faith, that hope demonstrated to me, because that's what most people need, is a demonstration.
Right, they do.
Nobody was able to run a 5-minute mile until someone did.
Exactly. Proclamation alone does not win followers, but demonstration of what you're saying does.
Yeah, and then when I was able to see that, I took that into my life. And there's been situations, and I'll share off camera with you, there's been times where I didn't know how this was what was gonna happen, how I was gonna be able to do this, and then boom, something happened, divine.
Wow, an intervention.
And it was exactly what I was asking for. And that goes back to what you were saying, all we have to do is receive.
That's it.
But you got to have the childlike faith to know that it's coming.
You have to believe. To receive.
Just like your kids. Think about your kids. They know you're coming home. And they're going to be so excited when you come home and to receive you. So you have to be like that for God.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And they'll come.
Wow, that is so amazing. So I would like to say that I did my chaplain duty. Yes. It was very expensive to get you back on board. Yeah. But Jesus said, if I only died for one person, Jesus, well, we were told if he would do it all over again for one person.
Yeah.
And I feel like this happened because, first of all, God definitely divinely had you there that day.
Yes. Yeah, because I shouldn't have been.
You shouldn't have been. You were. And so I believe that it was for your faith to be strong, because I do believe you have a calling on your life. I believe you need to be a chaplain for law enforcement. I believe that you're going to lead a lot of men and women in the blue to freedom, because we need to see a freedom movement within the blue.
Yeah.
And it will just make them better cops, just like having Jesus in our life makes us better in every way.
Yes.
But we still fight. It does not eliminate the fights. And that's the thing. When I tell people, it's still a fight of faith with Phoenix every single day.
Yep.
And it's easy to not have faith during those days. It's easy to go back, well, did God really say? The devil gets in there. The devil will say, did he? Because when something takes too long, a dream, a promise from God, something you've been believing for, even God, show me you're real. When something takes too long, that's when their faith is shipwrecked.
Yes.
It needs to be demonstrated at points.
Yes.
But God has a timing for everything.
Yep.
And so that's what, and it keeps me having to stand, and I have to choose it. It goes back to what you said before. I can't feel it. It's like I got to choose it. It's like childlike. That's what childlike faith is. It's not that sit there, children just feel it and then they do it. No, they're just spontaneous. They're impulsive. They just do it. And you have to choose faith every single time.
Yeah.
And you have to choose to believe him even when you don't see things fast enough or in your timing or in your way. You know, and that's the development of us all.
Yeah. And the childlike activities is just, it's just so important. Like, you need to do that with everything.
Yes.
Like, just go to church.
I
Just
would
do
agree.
it. Just do it. Go take that salsa dance, even if you look stupid.
Totally.
Go do it.
Yes.
You know, go pick up a camera. Go make
Yes.
art. Go pick up a paintbrush. Do whatever.
Yes.
You know, because
Play Tonka trucks.
and do all of that.
Do
you know?
all that.
Like, because remember earlier I said, you know, I didn't feel love. I didn't believe in love.
Right.
You know, so what do I do as a contrast to that? I put myself in situations.
Where you don't receive it.
Well, not that, but I put myself as a side gig. I'm a wedding filmmaker.
Oh, wow.
All I do is tell love stories.
Wow.
But someone that didn't believe in love a couple years ago, now I strictly do wedding filmmaking, right? So I'm surrounding myself with something to be engulfed with it instead of being engulfed with
So it's the
trauma.
opposite. Yes. So you've picked an environment to be engulfed in it
Yes.
instead of constantly picking environments where you're running away from it because you don't believe in it. Because that's most people.
Right.
They will push you away before you were pushed away. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, when I tell you it's done, like, in my phone right here, like, I could show you, like, the picture. Just this past weekend, I was working a wedding, and, you know, it was really one of the best weddings I've ever worked. Like, everybody was just getting along. All the vendors were getting along. It was just great. Like, the bride and groom were great. The families were great. Because sometimes you have bridezillas, sometimes you deal with all types of stuff, you know. And I'll take that every day over the drama, you know, with law enforcement. But
right.
the photographer, she snapped this picture of me, and I'm sure we could put it up on the B-roll at some point, you know, on the edit. But she snapped this picture of me literally in the zone working. But you could see right there, look at my face, you know.
I mean, you look giddy.
Yes.
That if that's not childlike, I don't know what is.
That's literally me being childlike.
That is you being childlike.
And look how happy I am in that environment. You know, I'm feeling love again.
Right.
I'm feeling all that I've been lacking, and that's allowing yourself to be a child and to play.
You know, that is interesting. I never saw the connection between childlike faith and receiving love. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can see how that's very much needed in this world today.
Yes.
And I think if those things were kind of captured in a Christmas bundle, so to speak, for Christmas, I think you would have less calls to go on. And I think that hopefully cops can not only keep the peace, but they could be vessels of it.
Yes.
Because they learn to receive it themselves.
Yeah.
And you cannot give what you don't have. That's for anybody. But I do hope in this time of shaking for our nation, for our communities, even personally, I feel the church, us as individuals, there's just a shaking. And anything that remains, God is going to strengthen. Mm-hmm. But anything can be shaken, will be shaken. That's a good fight of faith, is that we stay unshakable in the things of God at this time. And I would love nothing more than for you to, you know me, I'm going to make sure you're a chaplain, because you need to be a chaplain. You have a ministry call in your life, and you can still do all the other stuff. But someone needs to bring what you have received, you need to now impart to others, because that's what God does, right? And I'm so glad that we have a bond for life.
I know.
You know, because really, you being in that cop car with me at that moment, that is crazy.
Yeah.
And that God set us up to know each other and trust each other, even when we first met at church.
Yep.
So that whole moment was prepared, which I tell people, and sometimes they get confused. but I feel like we were called to this.
Yes.
This has changed our community. Phoenix's life has changed people
Yes.
everywhere, and not just on law enforcement, not just the first responders who were involved, but for our whole community. So God redeems the fights that we are in for the sake of faith.
Yeah.
And this won't be our last.
No.
It's life. I mean, you as a cop, now, me going through this, I used to feel very like faith should shelter me from anything bad. Faith should be, if I'm good and I'm doing all this for God, it's like what you were thinking earlier, I shouldn't have anything happen to me. But no, we're targets, we're bullseyes, because the devil, who is the enemy, our enemy, because he hates God so much, he wants our faith.
Yeah.
So that's what he's after. He's not after the faithless. He's after the faithful.
Yeah. Pay attention to the ones that are getting attacked the most.
Pay attention to that.
Because they're probably game changers.
They're game changers. And come around them. And I mean, come around them like an army. Because what I have learned, and maybe this being in law enforcement as a chaplain kind of helped me understand this, faith is war. Faith is not name it and claim it, unicorns, butterflies, and rainbows.
Yeah, it's a daily choice. It's a battle that you constantly gotta do, because it's easy just to be doom and gloom.
Is right?
It's easy to be a victim.
It is.
Like there's so many people that they choose victim. I'm a victim, and they just live off of that story of being a victim.
Yes,
Like,
they just lie in it.
Yeah.
They choose not to get out of the pit.
Yeah.
They choose the pit.
Right. And all you're doing is you're just breeding toxicity. And that's what a lot of us do as law enforcement. And
it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I told you.
Right.
Yeah.
But what's the damage that you're doing, truly? Because it gets so much bigger. Like, you're damaging your home.
Yes.
You're ultimately going to get divorced. You're going to have
brings
children
death.
that hate you. You're going to all these different things because something bad did happen to you. I'm not saying it didn't.
Right.
But let's move past it.
Join the club.
Let's move past it, get stronger from it,
Right.
and move on. Like,
Right.
everybody has a story.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
And God will use every pain, every hurt, every horrible thing, trial and tribulation, to redeem something in this world. It's redeemable, but it's only redeemable when we put it in His hands.
Yep.
Well, I'm so glad you were my first interview of
Awesome.
season 2.
Awesome.
I've been waiting for this moment for a really long time, and I would definitely want to have you back, and I want to have actually more law enforcement, because again, this the good fight is all about where is God helping us, God's power to help us overcome when all hell breaks loose and when all is lost. And I don't know more a people group who have seen more loss and more hell breaking loose than law enforcement.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when faith is not fought in law enforcement, it causes death to families, death to parental relationship with children. It causes horrible addictions to form, and a death to souls and minds, bodies, emotions of our law enforcement. And before we cut off, I want to definitely pray for you. I want to pray for all those listening and for our law enforcement to find that childlike faith and get healthy.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Lord, Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for my friend and fellow compadre in this good fight of faith, Lord. Edwin, I ask that you bless him and his life and his family. Bless his health. Lord, continue to grow him in the ministry. Continue to give him favor and influence with others where I see just freedom coming to a whole bunch of folks because of Edwin's yes, his yes to you, Lord, and his testimony and his heart for others locked into a place of hopelessness and dormancy like his was, God. I'm asking that you use Edwin to awaken faith that fights, God. awaken faith in the foxhole of law enforcement, God, and set your children free, your sons, your daughters-in-law. Set them free of depression. Set them free of anxiety. Set them free of division. Set them free of addictions and hindrances to their emotional lives and their family lives. Lord, do a work in them. Lord, do massive baptisms at Bogafly Park, Lord, for the Blue, because something is just going through those agencies, Lord, that you are intervening in their lives the way you intervened in Phoenix's life, Lord. What is dead, go after with life, Lord, at this time. Intervene in their lives even now, God. And those who are listening, Father, everybody who's listening, they have somehow, this has touched in any way. We pray for their hearts to be reinvigorated with childlike faith again. We ask, Lord, that they would be able to, their hearts would be set on fire afresh with faith, and that their hearts would receive love. Maybe sometimes some of them for the first time, Lord. Set them free of whatever is barriers to those things, Lord, and help them find these outlets for mental health, emotional health, and family health. Lord, we ask this all in your name, and we thank you for it all. And this is for your glory, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.